Okay. Hello, everybody. It's Linda Laurel, and having a few technical difficulties here, but I'm going to get started right now. Want to thank you all for joining me today for the beginning of a new segment that I'm calling All Eyes on Texas. So I'm based in Houston, and I guess you could say from immigration to redistricting and a whole bunch of other issues, the eyes of the nation are quite often on what happens here in this state that I've called home for the last 30 plus years or so when I moved here to anchor the news at Houston's NBC affiliate. So I'm finding my way on YouTube and Substack and all the different platforms and trying to build some community and trying to help engage with folks about some of the issues that are happening here in the state of Texas that have national implications. So today, my guest is Amanda Edwards. Amanda is an attorney and former Houston City Council member running to represent Houston's 18th Congressional District. The seat has been vacant since the death of Congressman Sylvester Turner on March 5th. Edwards grew up in Houston, received her BA in political science from Emory University, and received her law degree from Harvard. At one point, following college, Edwards worked for the late Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee and now seeks to represent the very same 18th Congressional District where Lee left a lasting legacy. So I'm going to bring Amanda in right now so that we can have a conversation. Hi, Amanda.
Hi, Linda. How are you?
I'm well. How are you on this busy Wednesday?
It is a whirlwind, and that's the best way to describe it.
Yeah,
I'm well. Thank you for
it
asking.
has been a whirlwind. So we booked this interview actually several days ago, but it turned out to be a bit fortuitous because as of just a few hours ago, the new proposed redistricting map was unveiled. So I'm going to ask you, as someone who is one of the leading candidates in the race for the 18th Congressional District, what is your first take on what you've seen thus far?
First, let me just kind of back up a little bit so people have context. This is a mid-decade redistricting, which normally you have redistricting in concert when the new census comes out. We underwent that process already in the Texas state legislature. As a result, public funds were expended, resources, time devoted into coming up with the maps that we currently use. The Department of Justice then sent a letter to the state indicating that 4 districts within the state of Texas would constitute unconstitutionally racially gerrymandered seats and therefore should be subject to redistricting. The special session began on Monday, and last Monday rather, and it has been just a whirlwind ever since. The governor called the special session for redistricting. A hearing was held in Austin last Thursday with no map, and then they went to different markets: Arlington, Houston, places that were supposed to be potentially impacted by the redistricting. They went to those spaces and places and allowed public testimony, again, with no map. Now, there has been a map introduced by the legislature, and it is one that chops up many of the districts. And the original set of districts that were listed included the 9th, the 18th, the 29th, and the 33rd, which is in the Dallas area. The new map, however, reorients all sorts of things. Congressman Green's district is on the east side of the 18th Congressional District versus the west
I saw
side.
that. It looked like he's been moved from the 9th to the 18th. Is that what it shows?
I mean, it literally is, he was in the 9th, kind of the southwest Fort Bend area. He still has some of that left, but most of the district has now been moved to the east, where a lot of Sylvia Garcia's district was, and she's now been moved to the north. So now Intercontinental Airport in Greens Point is in the 29th district. So it's just being completely refigured. The 18th looks to be much further south. I hesitate to get into a lot of detail when discussing the maps, only because we also know that this process has lacked transparency,
Hmm.
and will continue to lack transparency.
So
And so,
generally
as
speaking, would you say that that basically they're trying to keep the blue districts blue and the red districts red and increase the
they're
number of.
picking up, they want to pick up, there is an attempt to pick up there is an attempt to pick up Republican seats in this process. um, but what I was going to say and caution us into this discussion about the map that's been presented today, I do not believe that that is going to be the map that passes.
Hmm.
With these processes, often what can take place is that the map you start with has very little to do with the map that ends up being the map that appears before the vote. And so that becomes kind of, just something to be aware of and have awareness of about. So there is a hearing taking place this Friday at the Capitol at 10 a.m.
And that's a
Um,
public hearing, right? People can
it is a
go and.
public hearing, and
Mhm.
now we have an item to consider. When I went and provided my testimony previously, I could not check any box other than a neutral stance, because when we had to sign in, because we didn't have an item for consideration to be for or against.
Mhm. Mhm.
Now you actually have an item being considered. Do I think this item is really going to be the item that's presented for vote and approval for the redistricting? No, I
So
don't.
let me ask you this. There's been talk about the Democrats actually walking out of session to deny a quorum to keep this
Mhm.
from happening. Do you think that's a good idea? A lot of folks, are saying that Democrats need to be more aggressive in fighting not only this, but a whole host of other things that are coming out of the administration, out of the Trump administration. Do you think Democrats should walk out of session to deny the quorum so that this would not
Yes, I
pass?
do. I
You
think that
do.
this is an urgent, silencing the voices of Black and brown voters, the Black and brown voices of the state of Texas is something that must be halted. And as I stated, we have got to be in the business of uplifting and elevating voices of a wide array of sorts versus suppressing them. The origins of these seats that began to be majority minority and coalition in nature stem from the fact that we had drawn and gerrymandered the lines historically to suppress Black and brown voters, in terms of their ability to have representative representation.
Mhm.
And that's wrong. And what we are now faced with is this notion of now entering in midway through the decade, right in time for the midterm, and playing a very dangerous game in which, if you do this here in Texas and you go and set and go in the state and with this as your cover, and your approach is to address the racial, the issues of whether or not you should have majority minority districts, etc., and then you go in and start creating other seats that are for you, designed for you to win the midterm, that's largely problematic and it's not sustainable. Can you imagine having a country in which every midterm election, every state is faced with mass redistricting? It's
Yeah.
bad enough when we do it every 10
Well,
years.
it boils down to politicians then wanting to choose their voters
That's correct.
instead of having it be the other way around, where voters actually choose the politicians based upon what the politicians are saying they can do for the voters.
Linda, you nailed it. You
Mhm.
nailed it. That's
Mhm.
exactly what this is. And this is not the kind of gamemanship that is welcome in a democracy like ours. We do not
So
welcome this type of gamemanship.
short of the walkout, let's say the walkout happens, and at some point they would have to come back, obviously. Um, but what other options, what other methods do Democrats have, and do constituents have to try and challenge what is going on?
Well, first, I would say you've got the option of, now trying to beat the quorum. That's one of those pieces. I think we need to be in a position where we are pushing back with every tool we have. We've seen the Democrats flee the state before. And yes, there's other business that needs to be carried out in the state, and certainly acknowledge that too. But we also need to balance that issue with balance those interests with these interests as well. And so I think we have got to, and it's so curious to me that we are prioritizing the redistricting before there's resources being provided to those that were caught up in the Guadalupe River flooding. And, so our priorities are all out of whack as in the state of Texas in terms of what's being prioritized, what is being done. I think also, there are potential for lawsuits that could emerge. That always happens when you have redistricting. So lawsuits, but then also, what can people do? You can help support organizations that may be involved in litigation. There are a variety of different sorts. There has not been a lawsuit filed at this moment there, but there are there's a lawsuit pending still from the previous iteration of redistricting. So that's one way people can get involved, if not as necessarily the litigant themselves, but you can help contribute money to some of these organizations and groups that file and help to write briefs in concert with what's happening in these hearings and court proceedings. So there's some ways you can donate money, you can help in those ways in a more concrete, direct way to help support the effort to fight back. You can raise your
voice. What are you hearing from the folks in your district as you go about campaigning? I know there was as you just mentioned, there was a public hearing here in Houston on Saturday that was very well attended. Yeah. What are you hearing from people about this redistricting effort? What are they saying to you, and what do they want to see happen?
They don't want this. I mean, they do not want redistricting. Again, this is an attempt to silence Black and brown voices. This is an attempt to play politics and manipulate the system in a way that is dangerous. They don't want that. The continued, consistent attack on this, and I'm going to bring up the 18 because that's the seat I'm running for. This district is comprised of 800,000 people. That has now been, if you count the time where Congresswoman Jackson Lee got sick and passed away, and then Congressman Turner passing away, and then the delayed special election, and the fact that there would be a runoff, you add all of that together, you're looking at 18 months of no representation.
Yeah,
this is crazy. This is a seat that was once held by Barbara Jordan, Mickey Leland, Craig Washington, Sheila Jackson Lee, and Sylvester Turner, all of whom were known to be fighters for people and for justice. So to go from that to now having this 18-month period with no vote, no voice, no ability to have federal advocacy, no federal funding at a time where we're in the midst of hurricane season. Imagine if something bad from a hurricane or disaster perspective happens and we don't have our point person in Washington directing resources down to us. Imagine that. This is dangerous.
A flash of a photo of Congresswoman Lee out delivering water. I mean, literally right up almost until her last breath. I mean, that's the kind of fighter she was.
Yes,
and that's the history of all the representation in the district through the years.
Exactly. And so you go from that to nothing. And now you say, while you are without representation, while you're down, let me further kick you while you're down. I'm going to literally put you on the chopping block. There's an adage that I'm going to say is very applicable here. And it says, if you're not at the table, you're what's on the menu. And right now, that is the embodiment of what is happening with the 18th Congressional District. We have no voting member at the table, and therefore they're attempting to slice and dice it up. And it's, whoever for the taking. And it's ridiculous, and it's sad, and it's outrageous, and it's wrong. I mean, we have got to understand and get back to a place where we acknowledge some things were just right and some things were just wrong. And we are not at that place. It's a winner take all dynamic. Whatever you can get away with is what is done. And this is beyond toxic. It's dangerous. It is destabilizing for our democracy. I am worried about our democracy by way of the games that are being played today, because they do have far-reaching implications. The fact that the governor did not call a special election timely led to the fact that
I was just going to ask you about that. I'm really glad you brought that up, because Congressman Turner passed away in March. And a special election. And there was another, I believe it was in the state of Arizona, where they had another seat that was open. And that election just happened. And Governor Abbott could have called for a special election much earlier, but instead delayed it. So speak to that for just a moment, and then I'm going to wrap it up and let you go because I know you got things to do.
That's okay. He delayed it just in time for
Mhm,
something called the Big Beautiful Bill to pass. And in
mm,
that Big Beautiful Bill, it cut $900 billion from Medicaid. It cut $300 billion from SNAP. It told people who were seeking to go to graduate schools and needing loans for that, that their amounts that they were eligible to receive would be capped. It was a systematic way and means of cutting off opportunity for people, working people, opportunity for people to thrive, opportunities for people to have social safety nets, you name it. And so something with this type of catastrophic effect was able to pass, and it passed the House of Representatives by a margin of one vote.
mm.
Had I been in the seat, I could have blocked that big beautiful bill, which is
Wow.
just mind numbing when you really think about
Mm,
how far reaching the devastating effect the devastating effects of this measure will be.
mhm,
And truth be told, again, we should not the statute should not have even allowed for that type of discretion to be available, but it
right.
does. There's so many layers of what is wrong with this picture, but you know who loses each and every time we have this lapse in judgment and playing politics and all that? The people lose. The people
Yeah.
lose their benefits, the people lose their health care, the people lose access to economic stability. That's what they're losing by way of us playing these types of politics. And if you think creating a group of people who will not have social and safety nets doesn't create more problems by way of now you're creating desperate circumstances, you don't understand the way the world works.
Yeah.
And you don't have any business being in a decision making capacity. A lot of these choices really are uninformed, short sighted, and really will lead to lingering generational impacts in our community. So it is high time that we get people who have been disconnected back into the game. I know that we have not been the Democratic Party by no means has been perfect. But listen, what is the alternative is the question you need to ask. And if you think this alternative is the right one, I'm sorry for you, but that is not the case. We have literally touched the stove to learn that it was hot and our hand is burning. And we
Well,
are sitting there with this in this moment. And what else, what other damage are we going to do?
I love this call to action because there the numbers that say how many people did not vote in the last election or people that don't vote in local and state elections, and now it's becoming very apparent what the consequences of that is, right? What the consequences
100%.
are, I should say. So yeah, Amanda, I wish you the absolute best. You are neck and neck with one other candidate in the race, and you're right there at the top. And so, I wish you the best as the race concludes. And I will probably call you and have you back on as this whole redistricting thing kind of wraps up, and we'll see kind of where it goes. So, what's your final message to folks out there?
Make your voice heard. Do not be a spectator in this moment. When this is a pivotal moment, this is something that is unprecedented in our times. So when we look back at what was happening during the Trump era, what will you say you did? What will you be able to say how you intervened? And if your response is that you were merely a spectator, that's not the side of the of this that you want to land. You want to be this person that stood up, made the difference that you could make. It's not going to be the same for everybody. Whether that's you amplifying the message, whether that's you signing up to participate as a speaker in the hearings. I mean, there are a variety of ways in which you can get engaged. We've been phone banking, calling the governor's office, calling the state reps. Let them know you're here and that you say no to
And
the
that
redistricting.
that matters. People don't realize how much it
It
matters, but
matters.
it
I have
really
worked
does.
in Congress. It matters. I have worked for Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee in the 18th Congressional District Office in DC. It matters.
It
So
matters. So
call them
let your
18
voice be heard because our voices matter. Absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely. Okay, Amanda, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much. You have a great rest of the day. I know you've got probably more interviews to do, so
Yeah.
go get after it.
Thank you, Linda.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.